welcome back to another episode of Ruby for All. This is normally where I say what's up to Julie, but she is not here right now, unfortunately. So I grabbed my good friend Drew Bragg because Drew and I were in Vegas together, and Drew attended Sin City Ruby and I did not. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to get his take on the conference. So Drew, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to give yourself a quick intro? I don't think you've been on the show before.
I haven't been on yours, no. I haven't been on Ruby for All. I do have my own, so I'm sure anybody who's a crossover listener is tired of hearing my voice. But for those who aren't, I am a host of my own podcast called Code and the Code Encoders Who Code It. I help organize the monthly meetup Philly RB. It's the Philadelphia Rubyists group. We are virtual, so no need to be from Philly. You can just come hang out with some Rubyists second Tuesday of every month. And yeah, I work at Podia with you and Jason and other folks that people might know from the Ruby community. And that is my poor elevator pitch of who I am.
Perfect. So we were both in Vegas. And so for a little bit of context for the listeners, y'all have probably heard me talking about how I've been burnt out. And on that path to recovery, I wanted to go to this conference, but I didn't think I would have the capacity to, if that kind of makes sense. I didn't really want to be around a ton of people, but I did want to go to Vegas. And Vegas to Phoenix, I thought was only 3.5 hours. It's actually 5. But in my brain, it was 3.5. But I texted Drew and I was like, hey, dude, would you be willing to share a room with me so I can kind of come just hang out? And he said yes. So why did you say yes? I think that's what everyone wants to know.
Why not? I don't spend a ton of time in the hotel room, as you probably noticed when I'm at a conference. Yeah. I'm usually hanging out. The hotel room is like if I need a break from people and peopling, which I know you get. So it's not like it would be an awkward conversation to be like, dude, you need to leave because I need 5 minutes of quiet. And if it gets you there, and that way you, me, and Jason were able to hang out and go to breakfast and dinner and lunch and anybody going to a conference, if you and I know each other even half well and you are strapped and need a place to crash, let me know and I'm happy to get 2 queen beds so we can hang out at a conference together because I like hanging out with my friends. It's my favorite part of conferences.
So this is your second time attending Sin City Ruby, right? And second time being a speaker there as well, right?
Yep. Yes. The first Sin City Ruby 2 years ago was my first time ever speaking. And so when it came up that Jason was doing it again, I reached out and told him that if he needed speakers, I'd be willing to do it. And at the time, he was like, nope, I've got everybody. And then he came back and said, someone dropped. Would you be down? And always down to help out. So I got to do the game show again, a little more polished version, I'd like to think. The first time around, I was super nervous. I've learned a lot since then. I've given it a few times. So it was a lot of fun. Got a lot of good feedback again. So yeah.
So how do you keep that format fresh? Because I really like it personally, because whenever I'm at conferences, it's really hard not to feel like I'm back in college where I'm like, I really just want to get up and move around and I don't want to sit here and it's been forever. And is this person ever going to stop talking? These are internal thoughts, right? But I really enjoy interactive talks like yours because they're fun and like you get to interact with people around you. You gave it in Atlanta and I was sitting next to Andy Kroll, and it was really fun to talk back and forth about, oh, I think it's this one, and I think this is why, and kind of compare notes. So how do you kind of keep that format fresh, even though you've done it a few times?
I mean, I have a couple of questions that go in and out. I can change syntax up a little bit too. For example, there's one question that it's global instance or class variables that it works on. So I can just kind of swap that out. There isn't a lot of crossover between conferences. Like I did it at RubyConf and then I did it at RailsConf, and I'm like, no one is going to show up to my RailsConf one because they all already saw it at RubyConf. And there's a recording if they didn't, I'm sure no. And then it ended up being standing room only for like a 350 person room. And I was like, what is going on right now? So that helps. I don't actually have to change it a ton because there's not a ton of crossover. It's the weirdest bits of Ruby syntax. So even if you see it and you go, oh, I didn't know that, I just learned something. We learn through repetition. So unless you're actually using these goofy things, like if you're code golfing with it, yeah, my game show is super easy for you. But unless you're really well versed in esoteric Ruby syntax. Like, you probably forgot. You might be able to sit there and guess because you're like, oh, I vaguely remember this. What does this do? But you're still thinking, you're still interacting. It's still challenging you more than just some guy up there speaking at you for a half hour. So those are all just really big advantages of this setup I came up with, luckily.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting that you talk about there's not a lot of crossover. So getting kind of more into this conference, I peeked my head in and watched Jason Charnes's talk. And I was not there for yours. I think I was working. I worked this week. So I was in the hotel room working while they were conferencing, and then I would go out and explore and wait for them. I did not recognize most of the faces in the room. The people who were at most of the conferences, I would kind of throw us in that category to a degree.
Yeah.
But like the Evil Martians crew, Rena, Vladimir, and people like that. So people that I'm used to seeing at conferences. But then there was a lot of people, I was like, wow, it seems like a lot of people I've never seen before, maybe know online, but not seen at a conference yet. So do you think it was a lot of new people? Do you know how many people it was their first conference?
He did ask how many people had attended the first one, and I think it was little less than half the room.
Okay, so I did meet all these people before.
Well, I mean, there was a few people who raised their hands. I was like, I don't remember you, and the first one was really small. I'm very sorry, but dang. But I think that's the wonderful thing about our resurgence in regional conferences is that you're gonna get to the point where you can kind of go to some of these regional conferences and you're guaranteed to meet someone new. Not everybody's going to make that trip to RailsConf, right? So they're waiting for RailsConf to come around to their city. But with regionals, they have a consistent conference that's local to them. So they'll go to that conference, but the speakers will always be new, or the outside attendees, the ones that do travel, will end up kind of being the new one in the room. And that's super cool. I know that Blue Ridge, there's going to be a lot of repeat folks. And I think that's really, really cool that we're going to have that Uber meetup almost in regional sections. I'll still travel. Like, I loved going out to Vegas and getting to hang out with people, but there was also a lot of locals, like a lot of people who just were able to drive in for the conference and wasn't making any kind of huge trek for it. So I think that's going to become more commonplace.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of these regional conferences returning to the West. Now that I'm out here, it's very easy for me to get anywhere around here, but then traveling back east is like, ugh. But let's talk about, so we arrived in Vegas around a similar time, and then you went to the speaker dinner. So how was that?
It was good. We went to a restaurant called the Lotus of Siam, so I think it was Thai food. I didn't remember it. It was actually the place we went the first time too, but I had completely forgotten how it worked. And they basically just bring out a bunch of food and dump it on the table, and you all just, it's like a big old potluck, which is awesome because I was
like dim sum.
Yeah, sort of. It was really good. There was some curry that was actually really good, and some other meats and tofus and stuff that I probably wouldn't have ordered, but because it was there, I ate it, and that was awesome to like eat that way. I love eating that way where it's like you can just kind of put a little bit of everything on your plate, find what you like, and then go back for more.
There weren't a ton of speakers, so how was kind of like the vibe? Because I've gone to one speaker dinner for RailsConf, which was very big, right? So I'm just kind of curious, these smaller conferences, what are these kind of speaker dinners like for those of us who are not out here speaking?
Yeah, not every small conference does a speaker dinner. Sometimes they just do like, hey, we'll just hang out and get drinks at this bar or whatever. But for this, it was a long table. So there isn't a ton of speakers, but it's a very long table. So you end up just kind of talking to your half of the table. I was also like, I got off my plane, checked into the hotel, and then ran right over. So I was a little late. I was super hungry and I was pretty jet lagged. And it was just kind of like, I sat down and went heads down in my food. And there were people trying to talk to me, and I was just kind of answering the questions, but I was just a little like, please feed me before you talk to me. I need to eat. I just was on a plane for 5.5 hours in a sardine can. So there was more people I would have liked to talk with there. But the nice thing about it being a small conference is I got that opportunity later once I was well fed at the conference days.
So you wake up the next morning, first day of the conference. We all went down and had breakfast. And you tolerated me waking up at my normal time and pounding away on my keyboard. So that was nice. Thank you.
It was my normal time too, because of the time zone change. You got up,
Right.
and I think I might have either already been up or was stirring anyway, just because my body was like, hey, time to get up.
Yeah. And then we had breakfast in the casino. So we stayed at the Tropicana, which I learned later was about to be torn down. So it might even be closed by the time this episode comes out because it closes very soon. I think Jason said we were going to be one of the last groups to stay there or something.
Yeah. Last event. I think it's end of April that they close.
Yeah, I think so.
They stop giving out chips like next week or something, or early April, because I don't know when this episode's going to go out. But then, yeah, not too long. So I took 2 chips home with me. Just kind of like, these are going to be collector's items.
Yeah, yeah. And they're replacing it with the Athletics baseball stadium, which is crazy, but we don't need to get into baseball. But the Athletics are not good, and they had never have been.
Hi there, Julie here. I would like to take a moment to thank Go Rails for sponsoring this episode. When I was first starting out, I struggled with finding up-to-date content to help me level up. Then I learned about Go Rails. Not only does Go Rails provide new screencasts weekly, they also have 2 fantastic instructors that break down complex topics into digestible chunks. On top of that, I really appreciate when they explain the whys behind the subject. One of my favorite walkthroughs is creating your first Ruby gem from scratch. What a great way to learn by stripping down to just the basics. If you care about leveling up as a Ruby engineer, you can't go wrong with Go Rails. Check it out at gorails.com.
So what was the first day like?
It ran over. I was supposed to be the guy who went right before lunch. I ended up being the first speaker after lunch because we were just running a little over. Jason had a pretty cool forced socialization event where he just kind of randomly sorted everybody into groups. You did your little intro thing. And I feel like at large conferences, when they do that forced socialization thing, I'm always
The
like,
icebreaker.
oh, God, please no. I'm going to run out of this room. But when it's a smaller conference like that, when you have 100, maybe a little less people in a room and they do that, it's like, well, this is actually kind of nice because I'm probably going to get someone I know in my group. So I'm not going to be like, oh no, I don't know anybody. And then I will also get to meet people that I'd probably get to meet soon after anyway, because it's such a small conference. So I liked how it rolled out. It didn't make me panic like some of the stuff has at like Ruby or Rails Conf, where it's a lot more attendees.
I'm not going to make you remember what talks are on which day, but I'm just kind of curious. What was the overall style of talk? Was it more technical? Was it more about business? Was it more about Rails? Was there a general vibe, or were they kind of all over the place?
A little all over the place. It was a nice mix. I think there was some technical, how you do this. Like Andrew Atkinson did a really good active record one. Tom Rossi did some object-oriented, very Sandy Metz-esque talk, and Ernesto did his tar pit one about refactoring and figuring out where to refactor. But then you also had like Irina and Adrian and a few others, or Jeremy Smith did kind of how to make Rails your business when it's not your business, is your SaaS product, like becoming an independent consultant. Adrian does Avo, so the dashboard, how to make that happen. Irina talked about running Evil Martians and what that sort of looks like. Jeremy talking about being a solopreneur. So like there was a nice mix. There wasn't anything hardcore, like the people skills stuff of like, hey, how to work on a team or whatever. But there was a good mix of very technical and more of lifestyle choices with Ruby and Rails.
Were there any that stuck out to you a little bit more than others?
Yeah, Stephanie Brazil, her talk was actually on JavaScript testing, but the way that she approached it was like, if you're familiar with RSpec, here's how to use Jest in JavaScript, which was really cool. Like it was a nice way to do the parallels. I loved Jason's talk. He brought some Podia knowledge in, which I am familiar with, but he did some live coding. He dressed up like Elvis during it. It was hilarious. And I very much enjoyed his. The one I think that stuck out the most, and it might have been because it was like the last day, but Obi Fernandez, who wrote the Railsway book, did his closing keynote or whatever on AI. And he had just different perspectives than how I have looked at or viewed or thought about AI. And like, is it coming for our jobs? Do we have to worry about being replaced as programmers soon? Yeah, his talk stuck out. I don't necessarily mean because it was AI and that's the new hotness or anything. It was just his take on it and its influence on the industry was very interesting. And he had a good background of going through some of the bubbles and going through the really big game changers and how he approached them and thought about them and what he's seeing as far as parallels or differences with AI. So yeah, I mean, I thought everyone's talk was really excellent. They were all good in their own way. It's almost disappointing that the talks aren't recorded, but as a speaker, I'm also like, yes, the talks weren't recorded. I can get away with whatever I want.
So you like it not being recorded from a speaker perspective?
I think I like it occasionally not being recorded because I get to try something out and not worry about like, oh, if it goes badly, there's, only the people in this room know that it went badly. There's no video evidence of it going badly. So it gives me a little more freedom, especially with a talk like mine where I'm, 70% of my talk is improv. 70% is just, hey, I'm going to have someone come up and guess Ruby snippets and hopefully they speak out loud and give me the opportunity to have a dialogue with them, or the crowd is very interactive and I can bounce off of stuff with them. But you also run into the risk of like, if everyone's really quiet, you have to fill that gap with some noise. So I did want to try out like a few, I say try out, but I wanted to just be a little more relaxed and see if I could make jokes that would make people laugh or alternate between self-deprecating humor and humor around my contestant. And this was also the first time that I didn't go into my talk with the front row were my contestants. This was the first time that I was just like, hey, if you want to come up, just raise your hand. And I'm like, this is either going to be great where people are just going to volunteer and come up, or it's going to be horrible where only the people who are going to know every answer are going to come up, or there's a secret third terribleness. No one is going to volunteer.
Right.
And I'm just going to have to call on people.
Right.
So luckily that didn't happen. I got a great mix. I got some people coming up with 10, 12, 18 years of Ruby experience and then doing the talking out loud, trying to figure it out. And it worked out really well, but that could have been horrible, especially for a video recording where like there's just this awkward silence and people are like, do I need to like press play again? Did it pause? What's going on here? So especially for this one where I wanted to try out new things, I was appreciative of it not being recorded. But for someone who gives a more traditional talk, I definitely see the value in it being recorded so that they can go back and look at it, or they can use it as part of their website, portfolio, resume, what have you. So yeah, I don't think it's something everyone should adopt, but I like it.
I think I recorded your first talk on my phone at the first Sensei Ruby.
Yeah. I think I'd asked you to, because I was like, I am not even going to be able to recall how this went. And I would like to give this talk again. So I would like to see how it went and like be able to pick apart my thing. And I've done that with past recordings where I will a few weeks, maybe a month or two after, go back and watch the recording when they're out, just so I can say, oh, that didn't work. I should cut this question, or I need to remember to do this kind of joke, or I need to be louder, or I need to not turn this way, or what have you. I don't know what I'm doing up there. I'm just guessing. So having some video evidence of what I can do better is helpful for next time.
Is it harder to speak at a bigger conference or a smaller conference?
I'll give you the most senior answer I can come up with. It depends.
This guy codes.
No, but it does, because they each come with pros and cons, right? If you're at a big conference, you're guaranteed to have people in your room. There's enough people there that even if only a small percentage show up, you still have a decent amount. Big conferences, name recognition, if you're going for that kind of thing, that's super helpful. Big conferences pay better usually, or will help you out with travel or what have you. But small conferences, at least for something like mine where I rely on audience participation, I think when the audience is the same for every talk and you're getting to know them and they're getting to know you before you give your talk, it's got a huge advantage over the larger conferences where I look out and I'm like, cool, there are 3 of my friends in the front row, 1 of my friends in the back, and I don't know anybody else in this room. Whereas for Sin City or Rocky Mountain Ruby, I already knew some of these people. I already could interact with them. I could already relate back to stuff that we had all shared from previous talks where At a 6-track conference, I have a pretty low percentage of connecting with anyone if I go, hey, if you just saw so-and-so's talk or if you were at the keynote, is safer, but not a guarantee. So I personally like the smaller conferences, but there's definitely a lot of fun and value in the bigger conferences. So it's sort of a personal choice, I think, for everybody at the end of the day.
The number one reason startups fail is that they run out of money. There are so many ways for startups to lose money, downtime shouldn't be one. Recent studies found that downtime can cost $427 per minute for small businesses and up to $9,000 per minute for medium-sized businesses. That's every single minute. A monthly subscription with Honey Badger helps you prevent costly downtime by giving you all the monitoring you need in one easy-to-use platform, so you can quickly understand what's going on and how to fix it, which helps you stay in business. Best of all, Honey Badger is free for small teams and setup takes as little as 5 minutes. Get started today at honeybadger.io. That's www.honeybadger.io.
What do you think went really well with this conference specifically?
It was very chill. Jason Sweat's a super
I heard that.
like chill, laid back dude. Like I said, we ran over on time, but like no one was like, oh no, we're totally screwing up everyone's schedule, or like we had an opening reception with a bar the first night and it wasn't a big deal that we ran a half hour over. They just moved it. He wasn't stressed about it. And that whole cool breeds cool kind of thing where it's like, because he wasn't stressed and he was totally fine with some people running over, some people being goofy, whatever. It took a lot of pressure off us as speakers. It gave the attendees more just chill time to like interact with people, talk to the last speaker. And it felt like a less stressful conference experience because of how laid back. It was almost like a 2-day meetup rather than a conference where you're kind of like, I've got to go here next and then I've got to go here. And I can't have my computer open when someone's talking. That's just rude. And it's a super small, chill conference. You can kind of do what you need to do. And everyone was just super fun to be around.
I didn't pay for a ticket. I wanted to be respectful to Jason Sweat in that sense. Not that he ever said anything to me. And when I was like, yeah, I might peek my head. And he was like, you're more than welcome to. But because I didn't pay, I obviously wanted to like let y'all have the conference experience. And then I kind of met up with y'all later in the evenings. But when I did peek my head in for Jason Charnes's talk, what I really liked is they had tables. And I think they had those at the first one too. Like you're seated at like kind of tables, almost like a classroom. And I really like that as someone who like can then twirl their feet as much as they want and open their laptop if they need to like take a little break. So I really like that aspect. But you don't think that people did have their laptops open possibly more because of that? That didn't bother you?
I mean, there was a fair amount of laptops open, but I think that when there's no tables, there's just as many laptops open. They're just literally in a lab. Because I think a lot of people take notes that way. That's I know true. Dana Keshebeck was there and she's a notorious note taker for conference talks. So she would have had her laptop open, clacking away anyway. It just would have been on her lap. And now she got the advantage of being on a table. I agree with you. I like having the table there too, because it gives you something to lean on. It gives you the ability to have your laptop open so you can take a note, or if someone mentions something interesting and you're not a note taker, you can quickly, bring up the website and bookmark it or whatever. And it's not disruptive. I feel like when laptops are in laps, for whatever reason, it's far more disruptive when the laptop's open on a table.
I would agree because I'm a nosy person because I was born in the South. So like if you're on a plane near me and you have your laptop open, I'm going to watch and see what's up, what you doing over there. So yeah, you're 100% right that when they're in people's laps, out of my peripheral vision, I'm like, what they doing over there?
Right. Yeah, when they're on the table, they're just like, oh yeah, a laptop on a table. That's a thing. Yeah. I don't know. It just felt less distracting even when people were using them to take notes or whatever. It just literally does not distract me as much.
Do you think there was anything that didn't go well? Or anything you might have done differently? Or would want to see differently done in future iterations?
I mean, no, that's the nicest thing about these small regional conferences. They don't need to be big, flashy, spectacular anything. Just the very nature of giving Rubyists a place to meet up, hang out, and listen to other Rubyists talk about their experiences with Ruby is all you need. It's awesome. I think Jason has a great place. Obviously, it won't be at the Tropicana, but like in Vegas, there are some times where you're just like, how am I supposed to get to so-and-so place? Or like, when I went out to Boulder Ruby, I'm super happy I went and I would 100% go again. But I had to fly into Denver and then I had to rent a car and drive an hour and a half, whatever it was, up to Boulder. That's not great. But Vegas is dummy easy to get to. Everyone flies in there. And then it's the most touristy city in the States. So it's easy to get around. There's something for everybody. You and I did the Hoover Dam instead of walking up and down the Strip, which some groups were doing. If you want to do that, like there's something for everybody.
Yeah, there's a lot to do in Vegas. So I guess let's talk about kind of Vegas as we kind of round this out. Did you enjoy your Vegas experience this year? What was your favorite thing to do?
I mean, I think going to Hoover Dam was cool. I'd never been. It's big. It's huge. I liked going up on the bridge and going on it and everything. That was fun. But then, I mean, I think I take it away from every conference, but it's like, man, it's so nice to hang out with people that like you potentially wouldn't be friends with otherwise, but because you have this shared love of Ruby and you're in the same place at the same time, you guys end up just hanging out. And it's such a great way of making friends or just hanging out with people at different perspectives. And that's the part that I always enjoy. I always am like gravitating towards whatever group is out and about. I try to like take the social anxiety edge off by hanging out in a group where I know at least some of the people. But yeah, I mean, Vegas is Vegas. Vegas has something for everybody. I can definitely have fun in Vegas or around Vegas, as it were. But Vegas wouldn't be my first choice. But I do think that for a conference venue, it's great because I'm an outdoorsy-ish person. I would love to go hiking or camping. You can do that pretty quickly outside of Vegas. Then you get back in, you can go to a hockey game, you can go gamble at a casino, you can go get hammered, see weird people on the streets.
I saw some weird stuff on the Strip too, but I love weird crap. I also like to just people watch. So I would finish work and just kind of go troll around the Strip and like have fun. And I don't gamble because I know I would like it too much. So just to say that like you can have a ton of fun in Vegas and not even touch a slot machine. So
yeah, especially if you're a people watcher. If you like people watching at all, Vegas is an amazing place to people watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's lots of shopping. And so we went to Fremont Street on Friday, the last day, and got dinner. And I really like, if you've never been or haven't seen it, look it up. It's a really, I don't know is it Old Vegas? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, it's Old Vegas. Yeah.
But they have like a huge LED TV like thing that goes across the entire street. And it's like my heaven because it's like flashing lights and there's like live concerts there. And it was a lot of fun doing that too. And hanging out with you and Jason Charnes was fun. So I enjoyed it. Do you have any takeaways from this conference?
I mean, nothing groundbreaking. There's a lot of cool things you can do with Ruby on Rails in case you didn't know. In case you're listening to this podcast and you're like, can I do cool stuff with Ruby on Rails? Yes, you can. Still, nowadays, it is not dying. It is stronger than ever. There was a lot of speakers there that I'm excited to see speak again. I really had a lot of fun at Tom Rossi's talk because it was a very Sandy Metz-esque talk, and he is a super high energy dude. So if you see him speaking at a conference, definitely go watch his talk because it is excellent. I mean, everyone's was excellent.
Right.
I don't have a solid like this. Well, I would go see every one of these speakers again, even if it was the same talk, just because the talks were really good. It was a lot of fun. I'm so happy I got to hang out with people, especially people I don't get to see often enough or only get to see virtually. So excited for the next one.
Is Jason going to do it again? Jason Sweat?
I have no idea. I think even after the first one, he was kind of like, nah. And then everybody was like, you should do it again. And then he's like,
in Detroit.
Yeah, he thought about doing it one a little closer to home. And then most of the feedback he got was just how awesome it was to do it in Vegas. So he was like, yeah, we'll do it in Vegas again.
It's some of the most fun I've had. Even I didn't even attend this conference, but I still had a ton of fun. And it felt like a mini vacation. I feel, and that's the nice part about Vegas is you're in the Southwest. The temperature is nice this time of year. The weather's great. And I've had a lot of fun both times, even though I didn't actually even attend this time, but still had a ton of fun. So I think that just goes to show more what you were talking earlier about Jason Sweat bringing his kind of style to these conferences, like laid back and cool. And his personality definitely shines through. And I'm very excited that these regional conferences are sprouting back up, because when I first came into the community, all of them had kind of died off to a degree. And I was like, wow, like I'm hearing all these great stories about like all these different places people have been having these regional conferences. I'm like, well, that kind of seems to be dead now. But here we are a few years later, and it's definitely come back. And I'm very thankful for that, and thankful for the people who spend their time organizing these conferences.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not an easy thing to do, but certainly a great gift to the community. If you're a good planner and someone who can take on a load like that, it's so awesome for the community to have a place to meet up and hang out and just hear from other people. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the show and kind of giving us a rundown on the conference for people who weren't able to attend. I saw a lot of chatter on Twitter of people being like, I got FOMO. Sounds like a lot of people are having fun.
Oh, yeah. We had a blast.
Yeah, it was a blast. So I'm sure people will kind of be excited to hear how it went. And I guess I would definitely recommend, if Jason Sweat does this again, I would totally recommend going. I think you would as well.
Oh, yeah. 100%. If it goes on again, and even if it doesn't, I think the point I was trying to make of like the smaller regional conferences being so much fun, they're coming back. They're coming back strong. There's almost a new one every year, or a few new ones. Like, find one near you and don't sleep on it just because, oh, it's not going to be the 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 people like RailsConf. You're going to make really good connections. You're going to meet awesome people and make hopefully friends for the rest of your career and life by tracking down one of these conferences or organizing one yourself if you're that kind of person in a new area. I think we have Madison Ruby in Wisconsin coming up, with Brighton Ruby in the UK, Blue Ridge Ruby in Asheville, North Carolina is coming back.
Home sweet home.
Again, I'm pretty sure Boulder Ruby is going to come back again. So there's an ever-growing list of options. I highly recommend getting out to one or two or as many as you can swing with work and personal life, but they're a blast.
I agree. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Drew, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You want to tell people again where they can find you online, tell people about your podcast and all those fun things?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on Twitter or X or whatever the heck he's calling it nowadays, Dr. Bragg. Dr. Bragg, most places like the Mastodon at Ruby Socials, Dr. Bragg, Blue Sky, GitHub, all of those things. I'm usually Dr. Bragg.
Dr. Bragg.
Dr. Bragg, yeah. I do have a podcast, Code and the Code and Coders Who Code It. It's at my extremely clever URL of podcast.drbragg.dev. Or you can go to the Philly RB meetup group, and I'm there every month, second Tuesday of the month, just hanging out with other Rubyists, talking about what's been going on.
Cool. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. To everyone listening, we will catch you back here, same time, same great place, same awesome people. Bye.
Bye.